You're running a shop floor, not a Pinterest interest board or a fantasy football league. You don't need inspiration, you need things to work. So welcome to Build Your Way, a podcast from Cetec ERP. This is a show for manufacturers who are in it every day, from quoting and shipping jobs to troubleshooting quality and material shortages, all while staying a step ahead of what's next. We bring you stories from the field, lessons that stick, and strategies that actually scale to help you build better. Let's get to work.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to the Build Your Way podcast. My name is Taylor Wagon.
I'm Scott Ryan. In this episode, we have Alex Beausoleil from Gemini Plastics and also Cetec, one of our business partners.
Thanks for joining, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
And you and I have a deep and meaningful link that I'm not sure you're even aware of, in that I was raised in Wisconsin. So I was a Madison and family in Milwaukee as well, up until fifth grade when I moved to New Mexico.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and you're Green Bay area, is that right?
Yeah, I live in a city called Appleton, but Gemini is in the Green Bay area. We're like 20 minutes away from the stadium for Lambeau, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Lambeau doors, to be specific. And you're obviously then a Packers fan and probably a Bucks fan.
Yeah, you don't really have a choice when you live here.
I don't have a choice, and I've maintained that because the places, like, you moved to New Mexico, there's no, it's New Mexico. There's not a thing. So I'm still
run into Packer fans too. So
I still love all the Wisconsin teams. Growing up in the '80s when they were maybe not awesome, that was still kind of fun. And these days, I feel like we'd be sad to not talk about the wild success of the Brewers these days. It's been fantastic here.
Yeah, it's been good for sure.
As a brief Wisconsin intro to those who are not from the greatest part of the Midwest, I was just maybe going to talk a little bit about some of the traditions around lakes and bratwurst. I have a friend he just graduated here and he's going up to be a Badger at UWM. And I was telling him, like, man, when you get there, it'll still be August, it'll still be warm. You got to make a friend quickly who can take you out on the lake. And they'll be, boiling brats and beer, having some boats, and it'll be great.
Oh yeah, if you don't have a boat here, you at least got to know somebody who's got one.
Exactly. I was like, and there's lakes everywhere, more than 10,000 lakes in Wisconsin, and it's a great time of year. So.
And about that many breweries too, so it works out. The ratio's good.
All right, that was my real kicking Wisconsin intro. I wanted to make sure everybody knows the glory of the Midwest here.
Yeah. Are you a Green Bay Packers shareholder? What's the official formal title for
I'm not 100% sure how that works. I know at one point that my dad, who actually owns Gemini, that he complained about some kind of tax that he had to pay, but that some benefit of it is that you're a shareholder. I don't know all the details because I don't live in the county, but I know there is like a tax you pay that specifically relates to the Packers somehow, but it's okay because you're a shareholder.
Interesting. Well,
It's in the family.
Yeah. Well, and like one of my good friends who lives in Austin, he's a shareholder because they're publicly owned. I don't know.
It's a nonprofit technically.
Oh, okay. So
Like that, yeah.
like a co-op.
It's a co-op football team. Exactly. It is. It's the only NFL team that is a nonprofit. And
I think it's like the only major sports team.
There are some in Europe.
Okay.
In the U.S.
Yeah, but on the U.S. No. Yeah, America first and always and last. Yes.
First and last, and yeah, go Packers. Though with apologies to my friends from other wonderful states, no hard feelings. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about how I want to talk about how Gemini Plastics, hear about tell us about Gemini, tell us about what problems you were facing, how you guys ended up using Cetec, but just about the company a little bit. Fire away.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. I'll give like a brief company history. we've been around since 1975, so it's actually our 50th anniversary this year, which is cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I can't speak to a lot of the history because, as you could probably tell, I haven't been here for most of it. But I've been here about 10 years. But yeah, in the 70s is when it started up, when plastics first kind of started getting popularized in manufacturing. A lot of the trade names you see now, like in the 70s, is when they first started being put on drawings instead of steel and that kind of thing. And Gemini kind of rode that wave back in the day, and we did a lot of handmade sort of fabrication, that kind of thing. This was pre CNC, so we kind of rode the wave of industrial plastics being popularized. And then in 1976, so not long after the company started, my grandmother started working here as a kind of like accounting, and she also answered the phone, maybe did a little bit of like receptionist tasks. And then she worked here until sometime in the 90s, and then she actually bought the business, and my grandparents owned it, and they ran it for about 10 years. And then now my father owns it. So we kind of rode the wave of industrial plastics, and then when my dad took over, we kind of rode the wave of CNC. So he kind of took on the project of like, okay, we got to stop doing everything by hand with fixtures and a ton of labor and everything, and we need to get into CNC. This is going to be a big thing. So he kind of took that over and brought us in that direction. So yeah, and then now today we're kind of trying to ride this next wave of digital manufacturing and modernizing kind of all the front end process and automation, all this stuff. So yeah, we are, otherwise our products and service, we are a OEM replacement part manufacturer for the most part. We service a whole bunch of different industries. I mean, like you name it, anything from medical devices to agriculture equipment. One of our big sectors is snow removal. That's probably one of the few parts that we make that you'd probably see if you're out and about. Like if you go to like the Denver airport, and they're clearing out tons of snow in like formations, with the huge snow plows, we make the liners for those, like for a few different manufacturers. So, and then we also make consumer level snowplow liners too, like pretty much anything that's a plastic plow liner. So yeah, we do mostly OEM replacement parts. So yeah, that's kind of what we've always done, and we've changed a little bit. Back in the day we did more fabrication, but now we do a lot of more high volume industrial work. So
those liners, you guys are, a liner seems like a large thing for a CNC machine.
Yeah, we run really, that's kind of our core product, I would say, is our large format CNC routing. So we have one of our machines is 5 feet wide by like 20 plus feet long, and we can run really large liners. And some of them that we make are so big that they're actually 2 pieces, even with a machine that big,
Right.
And they're just absolutely massive plow liners. When you stand under them, they're huge, And but otherwise, we also do injection molding, and we have a huge network of different, like our supply chain is pretty diverse as far as different vendors. So, one of our specialties too is like a hard to source part or something that someone's not sure how to make. We can usually figure it out through our network of suppliers and get something made for somebody.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, interesting.
So you mentioned that you think this next phase is kind of like your digital transformation kind of set of things. Does that mean that you guys see like your next phase of growth as primarily efficiency on the internal side instead of scaling on the external, new markets, new customers? You're focusing more on, I guess, cost reduction and efficiency at this point.
Yeah, I think we did that, I would say, and we're sort of on the tail end of that project. And Cetec definitely helped us out with that a lot. I mean, that was probably the beginning of us deciding to go in that direction. And now that we are sort of comfortable with our internal processes and systems, we are trying to dial up the sales and marketing and kind of take a different approach. Like we're really inspired by the newer, like bigger players like Xometry and Proto Labs, people that have like big networks, and then they pair that with some amount of internal capability, but their powerhouse is really their front end, instant quoting, portals, something that's more user friendly for the buyers.
Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of on our roadmap at this point as far as where we're headed. So
That algorithmic estimation stuff that some people do where you submit a drawing and they submit a price based on not human input, but like that's a really fascinating set of things. It feels like there's probably you're going to be in the definitely the high 80s, potentially the high 90s% accurate, and there's probably a couple cases where somebody can really get a great deal.
yeah, it's probably not perfect, but you hope that the amount of volume you can do and just the convenience makes up for it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Where's the name Gemini from? Like what
Yeah, we started in the 70s, and that type of thing was cool at that time. Astrological stuff. I don't believe. I mean, I know I've never met the guy who actually started it. I think he's still around. I don't think he's like a twin or anything. Maybe he was. I don't. Maybe I'm getting the story wrong. Maybe he was a twin, and that's where it comes from. But it was something like that. Yeah, some kind of astrological.
It's like it's a little tail end. It's
Right.
Cancer. So
Yeah. Right. But now Google is naming all their AI stuff Gemini, so we're like, dang, we held on long enough that it's cool again.
That's funny. Okay, so you joined in with your dad a decade ago, right? You said about 10 years, and then you got tasked with figuring out, hey, go clean up all these things. You're young, you should be able to figure out all the computers. One of those situations.
It was sort of one of those. I mean, when I started here, I was doing a really entry level sort of inspection role, and I was filling in and shipping and receiving a little bit, and I didn't know much about manufacturing. I was pretty green to it when I came here, but I kind of, you pick things up as you go, and I did have a sort of IT computer background, and we were running on a pretty antiquated like internal system. We had like a server that we were running on site that was kind of old, and everything was just sort of old school, and then what actually started it before we decided to go down the ERP road is in that time period, there was a cutoff date to go to the new ISO standard, the 2015, and we were 2008, and that deadline was kind of looming, and the person who worked here at that time that was sort of in charge of it was struggling. And looking back, I can't really blame him because we had our system was old school and it was hard to keep track of things and do it in a way that's compliant was not easy. And he basically just kind of said one day, like, I don't really know where to go with this. And I had heard about that, and I said, I think we can figure this out. Like, we're gonna have to change some things, but like, I did a little research on my own time, and I was like, this is a project I'm willing to take on. So yeah, the responsibility kind of shifted to me for that, and me and my dad Joe, that we just took it on ourselves, and I think we did the whole thing from when we decided like, okay, this is now our job, to when we had to be compliant for our first audit was only months. So that was a challenging time. There was a lot of after hours meetings at either of our houses, just sitting with our laptops on the couch trying to be like, okay, how does this work? Going clause by clause, trying to pick a good software. At that time, we had actually just looked for ISO software. I was like, well, let's just find some kind of canned thing that we can use to sort of template us through this. And we did, and it worked. But then through that process, we realized like we just need better software in general. Like we should be able to get something that runs the business and helps us be compliant. And that ultimately led us to Cetec.
So I assume the ISO requirements customer imposed, right?
Yep. We have a DoD customer in the area that you probably heard of, but they required it for all their vendors, and that was initially why we had looked into it.
I was once, somebody described ISO to me as like a business virus that somebody catches it, and then because you're supposed to prefer suppliers and relationships with those who have ISO, everybody selling to you now has to scramble to get it, or they're going to lose their contracts, or you're going to lose, like, when we buy from you, or we're going to, like, so it's an instant way to, like, If you don't have it, you just fell way down the list on who they're calling. So it spreads from there, and then once they get it, they have to do the same to everybody else. And it's an interesting model of it does. I think literally you probably model it like an epidemic, spreading across. And so when you get it, like nobody's like, hey, I got a great idea, guys. We're gonna do ISO, and then be like, well, why? And as soon as you say, well, 40% of our customers say that we have to, or they're going to buy from somebody else. It's like, okay, we're in, we're doing this. And you can either like completely hack it and make your processes, worse. Because that's part of the thing is it doesn't necessarily require excellent process. It requires repeatable process, like a repeatable documented process. And if you enshrine, the world's most hellacious system in there, then that's the one you have to follow. And if it becomes an opportunity for you to say, well, let's evaluate it and let's actually do something awesome, then you made everything awesome. And you need enough space and time to do that. And hopefully, like software-wise, we think about a lot of things that we do is trying to provide like a template so that there's a semi-easy way to answer an auditor of like, hey, well, how do you handle tool maintenance? Like when's the last time this was calibrated? And it's like, oh, very easy. I look up the tool and it tells me right here because the software tells me. And then you just, hopefully it's on the awesome side, not on the hellacious side. But funny. So now you're doing other things than that, and this is our chance to let you transition and talk about some of what you guys are doing from Gemini. And my understanding is you guys went through this whole transformation, figured all this stuff out, and like, well, we could do that again. We could walk somebody else through that. We learned all this stuff. We could help somebody. And I assume you guys were just like, well, is that basically the thought process to you? Like, you're like, I've got enough space. This is looking pretty good. I could do that again for somebody else.
Yeah, as far as us branching out into the software consultant side, yeah, we that's pretty much it. I mean, we did it ourselves, and then we used the system after that for like 5 years. So we're pretty comfortable, and we're pretty deeply implemented, I would say, into the software. Like we use pretty much every module with a couple exceptions. So we have a lot of exposure to it. And then also, I think just my own level of expertise in it, just being the guy here, like during that first year when we were going into the system, if there was a question in the system, they all funneled to me, So I've handled a lot of different areas of the system and answered a lot of questions. And, it felt like a training session on how to implement at that point. So I was like, you know what, I think we could help other people with this. And at the same time, we were hearing, when we talked to customers and vendors, we were hearing a lot of people say they were looking into different systems. Like it felt like everyone was talking about it, So we kind of just saw an opportunity, like maybe we should take a shot at this.
What's the ideal profile for you? And you feel like there's like a size or an industry or a vertical or a business type, or like what would you not want to do? Let me say it that way.
I mean, I think our ideal, to me, it's like someone similar to us, in size and scope. Like they don't have to be exactly the same and be like a job shop or whatever, but ideally, yeah, someone with like 10 to 20 employees that does job shop work and is somewhat local is like perfect, and we did manage to find a couple of those. So, but yeah, like that would probably be our ideal. I would be willing to branch out and help someone a little different, but those are our favorite people to talk to, because when we talk to them, it becomes apparent right away that we speak their language, and usually we can relate to someone on their challenges because we've been where they are if they're looking at a new system. And if on top of that, they also do anything similar to us as far as product, if they're like low volume, mid volume, high mix, we usually really resonate with people, and they know right away that we're not just another like IT company pushing a software product. Like we actually do this,
Yeah. It's an interesting blend of skills to have, something on the IT side and something with like, I've done the manufacturing as well. I fell into IT, this side of it because I was doing it over here. That's pretty ideal for that.
Well, we've talked about like a couple of the main goals is for them to kind of, in our sales cycle, to get to this point of, oh, wow, look at all the value, this discovery of value. But also the other side of that coin is you get my business.
Oh, yeah.
You understand me. So like, you you talk about that connection.
Yeah.
That's
A level of understanding that, like, when I say this, you know exactly what I mean.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the vocabulary alone is like so much of a thing. You know, I could describe this to you, but if I just say this word and you're like, oh, well, here's what you're gonna have to do for that. I'm like, oh, that feels a lot better.
Yeah, definitely.
How does so you mentioned Gemini's? Okay, you've kind of solidified processes, and now you're looking at this kind of sales growth initiative. What does that look like for you guys on a mark? I know you do a lot of marketing for GP Tech, and I've seen some of the demos are really excellent. Have liked a lot of the stuff you've done. What does the marketing and sales cycle look like?
Yeah, for more of the Gemini side of things.
Yeah, and I think I'm also curious.
Yeah, I'm actually curious where they're different.
Yeah.
Like how much are they the same? How different are they?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting because Joe, our owner, also does most of like the sales work. And I'd say for the most part right now we're pretty old school with that. Like we like to knock on doors, trying to make appointments with existing customers when we know they have new purchasing people, that kind of thing. But a lot of manufacturing is still pretty old school, so that is fairly effective. Like you can get opportunities just walking in a place still. But we're starting to branch out into more like Google Ads, this kind of thing. We've thought about branching out into like content marketing, but we've done a little bit of that and we don't usually find a lot of traction, but I think maybe we're not doing it right. We might try to revisit that at some point, but
Is that on the Gemini side, putting out Google Ads? And have you had any success with that?
yeah, we've had a little bit. Sometimes I think a lot of that is how you set up those campaigns is really critical, and there's kind of an art to it. We've actually had more success when we hired someone to help us with it. But yeah, we actually did attract a pretty decent size local company that we ended up making some parts for that we are attributing to an ad campaign. But yeah, it's kind of hit or miss for us. Sometimes we'll run an ad for a month or two and we don't really seem like we really get anything. And sometimes we'll turn it on and the next day someone reaches out. We're like, oh wow, that was worth it.
Do you target that really within like a region as well? So you try to geofence it a bit?
Yeah, we like to work with people in the Midwest. It's like usually the freight side of things. If we reach out too far, it seems like we can't really compete if we have to ship things too far. So yeah, we usually geofence kind of upper Michigan, lower Michigan, our direct area in the Fox Valley, Indiana, Chicago area. Yeah.
Huh. No, that's cool. I feel like Scott and I have talked about this a couple times that for like a small or medium sized manufacturer, especially a contract manufacturer, customer acquisition is very hard in figuring out how to do, how do you do marketing? How do you do, any sort of lead acquisition there is just a struggle. So I'm really happy to hear that you were able to get some combination of Google Ads to work for it. That's fantastic. I mean, at that point, when it becomes a sales problem and like, what can you deliver? What do you like to work with? You're at least in that conversation of the game. You got a chance, right? So that's super cool.
You'd be surprised though. Joe was just doing sales calls yesterday. He told me he walked into a decent sized company in the area and they had an iPad for like signing in, but he didn't have an appointment. And he was just tapping away at the iPad, seeing if it would let him just talk to somebody. And someone just walked by and they're like, oh, is someone helping you? And he's like, oh, no, but he gave him a pamphlet, introduced himself. And he ended up with like a tour of the place. And the guy was the head of engineering. And it's like stuff happens. You don't necessarily know. You might just walk into a place and meet the head of engineering, which is for us usually like the ideal contact. So
that's funny.
So going old school can work too. And usually in our market, it seems like that is more bankable. Yeah. So
this is where we start quoting Glengarry, Glenn Ross, and talk about sales the numbers game, and
yeah. Well, you know who coffee is for.
Yeah, coffee's for closers. That's why I don't have any. Huh. Well, that's awesome. So your dad still kind of pounds sand here a little bit and gets out there and does all that and finds some success. I love it. How many shifts do you guys run? Because you're obviously like you're just one shift. You have like tons of capex on these machines, especially really large multi-axis CNC machine. That's a lot of cash in the ground. Um, I assume you would happily scale up to two. It's just you don't need to obviously to make things work. But if somebody had a demand, you'd be able to do it.
We've done it at times when we get larger projects. A lot of our stuff is like low, mid volume, high mix. We're switching job to job a lot. But every once in a while we get something long running that's like, wow, this is going to take up some time. And we've made a lot of advancements in work holding, like holding parts down while you're machining them. And we're able to run really pretty small parts across a really large router table and run a part that most people would run on a small CNC machine on a very large one. So we can hit go on that machine and it'll run for 5 hours, So sometimes we'll run sort of a lights out scenario with that, where when the guys in the shop leave, they'll start up a cycle, and then we'll just plan who's going to come in 5 hours later and pay a little overtime or something, and someone comes in and cycles the machine, and then someone else comes in the morning, cycles it again. And we've run some really high volume jobs that way. And so we typically run one shift, but in the case where we get the right order, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, cool. What are some of the challenges?
Oh yeah.
At Gemini? Like what's been hard or difficult? You mentioned scheduling. I think that's something that when we talk to job shops is
Notoriously hard.
it is. Yeah.
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 And with obvious value, but the hurdles seem to really snag people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like day-to-day challenges or like big hurdles we've had to jump in the past, but
Let me actually scratch that because Scott mentioned scheduling. How do you guys do scheduling?
yeah, so we don't use like a real in-depth implementation of like the scheduling features in Cetec at this point. We do reference the work start date that's auto-generated, and then that's kind of like a guideline for when we need to start something and when we need to drive purchasing to get materials in. And then we have like a just a queue that multiple users can see, and they divvy up the work from there. There's kind of a point person in the shop who knows who should do what, and it's pretty basic, low tech at this point. But
so over and over, that seems to be where I'll speak for me. I don't know if this is true for you. When I have like a job shop that is not extraordinarily large, I think the value in especially with a contract manufacturer that is like a very human oriented on the work, like the more automated it is, the more you can schedule it, the more there's a lot of human touches, the more the pace will flex and move around a little bit.
Yeah. The term high mix, low volume to me is really because as soon as you say that, like I can't rely on like I can't run the same job over and over. I've got to reprogram them. Yeah.
And so I tend to encourage people to schedule in like a loose way. And you're ultimately kind of looking for like a lead time. In Cetec, you mentioned work start date. We talk about having like, this is a ship date, potentially a due date to factor in shipping time. So a due date, a ship date, and then a work start date. And just getting accuracy on that and then kind of queuing it appropriately, maybe statusing to see where it is. That's where I think the majority of the value is for most situations. And so then you're in this like loose schedule where like we know roughly this is the amount of labor that it takes to build this, either because low tech, we did a work study, high tech, we're actually tracking start stop, and we know this is our average time, which is awesome. And if you have that and then like a rough idea of capacity, hey, if we started on Tuesday, it'll be done by next Tuesday. And that's what you need. And potentially then the next step is like, okay, we're going to orient by production lines so that we can kind of balance between those. And then the final form is like, okay, we're modeling capacity at every machine, every location. We know exactly what demand is. and I just don't. Most times, my current cliche on that is that the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, we've played around with it, but that's usually where we end up to. It's kind of like, is there ROI for that time spent scheduling or not? Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah.
Hard problem.
It's a similar question that I think could be asked around implementing AI.
Oh, yeah.
Is there ROI? Yeah. So outside of scheduling, like what other operational challenges you maybe think high level, something that is pressing now or has been pressing, unless you have like a great day-to-day example of something that is just difficult for you guys?
Yeah, I think, probably a topic you've heard multiple people say, like the tariff situation has been something that is new, and it's not like extremely challenging, but it's anything. I always think anything new usually throws people off. It's like in general, probably the challenge that we run into is when things change. And it's kind of funny because obviously, if you want to improve, you got to change things. But typically, when you are forced to make changes, that's where it's like, oh wow, this has room for error. This is new. If staff they're maybe uncomfortable with it, and in general, at least in the Midwest and the people that we talk to, people don't really like change that much. So uh, I would say in general, like whenever there's some kind of external issue that's forcing change, yeah, it can become challenging. But we try to embrace it. It's part of business and life. But yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. That's 2 for 2.
2 for 2
on that.
Yeah, we asked Matt from SNY on a podcast, what's difficult about your business? And I thought he'd say something like customer acquisition or something, and he's like, change. And I was like, oh, okay. It's real abstract, but it's like that's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, in manufacturing, the ultimate order, at least for us and most people that we talk to, is like if I can get a piece of business and just repeat it over and over without changing it, that's money. That's what you want. So yeah, when the challenging customers are also the ones who change their product constantly. So yeah, I could see why people would say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the GP Tech side, what's difficult, challenging, and how much does Joe overlap between the two, or how much are you really running point and running solo on that?
Yeah, Joe's role is more of like a sales role for that. He's the one who goes out and talks to people about it and kind of brings leads in. And then I do more of the technical side, the actual, going on calls, visiting people and helping get processes sorted out, training, most of the actual implementation stuff. So, but yeah, that's super new to us. So pretty much all of it's been challenging, but not in a bad way. It's been fun to learn, and we've actually an unexpected benefit of it too is that we've learned a lot about Cetec that we didn't even know, just because we have to dig in to answer a question, and we're like, oh, actually, we could do that. That's a pretty good idea. Like it's like stuff that a tab that I never really opened or a report I never really looked at that way, and then a client will share it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually we should use it for that. And then I go talk to Joe, and I'm like, hey, I was talking to our client about this. Like, we should probably be doing this. And I didn't really anticipate that when we started doing this, but yeah, I would say a lot of that is new, so it's kind of challenging. The project management stuff is something that I have a little experience with, but it's pretty minimal. Mostly just doing our implementation project here, which was assisted by the Cetec team. So I wasn't doing it solo, but that's new and kind of challenging, but it's been fun. Yeah, pretty much the whole thing with GP Tech is been a learning process.
Cool. Yeah. What about on I say this from more for selfish reasons than anything. What about on the marketing side around GP Tech? Joe's going door to door, and that's excellent. Most at least around Austin, when we've tried that, it's a locked door.
Oh man,
You can't get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. So maybe it's helpful. Somebody with a long manufacturing history knows the secrets. But so, we're focusing mostly on the marketing, not really a ton of outbound sales. What's been effective? What are some of the things that you've tried?
Yeah, well, what's interesting for us that probably makes us a little different than some of the other partners you guys might have is that we're a manufacturer. We have like between customers and vendors, we have hundreds of people we can reach out to, and a lot of them are in the market for ERP systems. And actually, the client that we're working on implementation with right now probably have another few weeks to go on it. And we found them because they are the people who service our vacuum pumps for our routers, and we've worked with them for a long time. But it was funny because I was sitting in here and I could hear Joe talking to the service tech, and we knew that the service tech was the son of the owner of the company. So we're like, oh, okay, they that's kind of interesting. Like he actually has some pull. He could, and I hear Joe talking to him, like he's telling him about GP Tech, and he actually sounds interested. So I got some marketing materials together and gave it to him. Not long after that, we met with, pretty much everyone at the company that would make that call, and we ended up doing a project. So that's cool. So yeah, I guess that was kind of how we envisioned it going when we started this, was like, let's utilize our customers, vendors, service providers, and see who's in the market and start there. We could branch out from there, and we do give people marketing materials and kind of explain what it is when we're calling for Gemini as well. So like if Joe goes somewhere and he's telling them about Gemini, but he can see that their desks are all towers of paper, he'll also give them a giveaway item from
Smell that. There's like a very distinctive that whole thing.
That used to be us too. So yeah, all too familiar with that.
Yeah. So that I guess that maybe it's like downloading. Okay, Joe, like what's your tell? Stacks of paper. What are your tells that a company might?
I think messy desks are actually a pretty big indicator. Our desks aren't messy. After Cetec, our desks are mostly just a keyboard and mouse. So.
All right. Anything else?
I don't think I have anything.
Alex, anything you wanna share before we wrap this thing?
I really appreciate you guys inviting me. Also, I just want to say, like, I've dealt with a lot of the Cetec team at this point through GP Tech and Gemini, and it's been so awesome. You guys are great. So
that's great. Thank you. If you're coming down for our user conference, you may maybe we'll show you around the new office when you're here.
Noah said it's pretty cool. He wanted to give me a tour, so I'm planning on it.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you in October.
Yeah, sounds great. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, continue to build your way.